Introduction. You've been told that reality is something external, something you simply perceive as it is. But what if that's not true? What if the world you experience is not just out there, but something your mind is actively constructing every second? Jacobo Grinberg's Syntergic theory challenges everything you thought you knew about consciousness, perception, and the very fabric of existence. This isn't just another abstract philosophical idea. It's a concept that can change the way you live, the way you make decisions, and even the way you understand your own thoughts. Your brain isn't merely a receiver of reality. It's a generator, shaping and transforming what you call real based on patterns, beliefs, and something deeper, an interconnected field that Grinberg called the Syntergic Field. As you listen, you'll uncover how this field works and how you can access it to expand your perception and influence your own reality. This is not about wishful thinking or mere positive affirmations. It's about understanding the deeper mechanisms behind your consciousness. Imagine the possibilities if you could truly modify the way your brain interacts with reality. So whether you're sitting comfortably with a cup of coffee or taking a walk, let yourself dive into this exploration. Each week, we bring you summaries of fascinating books that challenge and expand the mind. If you enjoy this content, make sure to subscribe, give it a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's begin. The Nature of Reality and Consciousness, Part 2. You wake up in the morning, open your eyes, and the world appears exactly as it was the day before. The furniture in your bedroom is right where you left it. The light filters through the curtains in the same way, and the scent of coffee brewing in the kitchen is familiar. It feels as if reality is something solid, something that exists outside of you, waiting to be observed. But what if that's not the full picture? What if, instead of passively perceiving the world, you are actively constructing it? Jacobo Grinberg's Syntergic theory invites you to reconsider everything you believe about the nature of reality. According to this perspective, your brain does not simply capture an objective world as a camera would. Instead, it generates reality by interacting with a deeper, underlying field that connects everything. This means that what you experience is not an absolute truth, but a filtered, interpreted version of an immense and complex informational field. Think about a time when you were deeply immersed in a moment, perhaps lost in a piece of music, a breathtaking landscape, or even a conversation that seemed to flow effortlessly. In those moments, your perception expands. Time may feel different, your surroundings become more vivid, and you might even feel a strange sense of connection with everything around you. What if those experiences are not just fleeting moments of heightened awareness, but glimpses into the true nature of reality? Science has long told you that your senses shape your perception of the world. The colors you see, the sounds you hear, and the textures you feel are not inherent properties of the universe, but interpretations created by your brain. Grinberg takes this idea even further, suggesting that perception is not just a reconstruction, but an interaction with something much larger, the Syntergic Field. This field, according to his theory, is a vast informational structure that connects all things, and your consciousness is the interface that allows you to translate it into an experience of reality. If you've ever had a moment where you and another person were thinking the exact same thing at the same time, or when you sensed something before it happened, you might have dismissed it as a coincidence. But what if it wasn't? What if those experiences were small but real indications that your mind is connected to something beyond your physical senses? The Syntergic Field suggests that you are constantly exchanging information with an interconnected reality, whether you are aware of it or not. Your brain, rather than being a passive receiver of information, functions more like a filter that determines what you perceive and what you ignore. This is why two people can witness the same event and remember it completely differently. Their brains are not just recording information like a hard drive, they are actively shaping it. This also explains why your emotions, thoughts, and expectations influence your reality more than you might think. If your consciousness is entangled with the Syntergic Field, then the way you direct your attention and intention could fundamentally shift your experience of the world. Consider the way your mind works when you are stressed or anxious. In those moments, everything around you feels more chaotic. People seem less friendly and the world appears overwhelming. On the other hand, when you feel calm and centered, the exact same environment feels entirely different. Colors seem brighter, sounds are more pleasant, and interactions feel smoother. This is not just a psychological effect. It is a direct demonstration of how your internal state alters the way you process and construct reality. Grinberg proposed that the brain's ability to generate reality is not limited to the five senses. There are deeper levels of perception that most people ignore simply because they have been conditioned to believe that only the physical world is real. Mystical traditions and certain scientific discoveries suggest that when the brain enters specific states, whether through meditation, deep focus, or even spontaneous moments of heightened awareness, it starts to access a broader spectrum of reality. This could explain why certain individuals throughout history have reported visions, premonitions, or states of deep interconnectedness that defy conventional understanding. If your brain is constantly shaping your reality, then understanding how to modify that process could be one of the most powerful tools you could ever learn. This is not about changing external circumstances, but about shifting the way you interact with the Syntergic Field. Imagine if you could expand your perception beyond the narrow filters imposed by everyday conditioning. What would happen if you could tune into a greater spectrum of reality, one where intuition, connection, and deeper awareness were not anomalies but natural aspects of human experience? One of the most fascinating aspects of Syntergic theory is that it doesn't ask you to take anything on faith. It simply invites you to observe your own experience and test these ideas for yourself. The next time you find yourself in a familiar place, stop for a moment and pay attention. Notice how your thoughts shape what you see and how your emotions color what you perceive. Reality is not something static. It is fluid, shaped by the interaction between your consciousness and the deeper field that surrounds you. Perhaps you've spent years believing that your mind is separate from the world, that your thoughts exist only inside your head, isolated from everything else. But if Syntergic theory is correct, then you are far more connected than you ever imagined. Your thoughts, your attention, and your perception are not just personal. They are part of a much larger process, one that extends beyond your brain and into the fundamental structure of reality itself. As you continue listening, you will explore how this understanding can be applied to your daily life. Whether it's improving your relationships, enhancing your creativity, or even altering your perception of time, the principles behind Syntergic theory have the potential to shift the way you experience the world. Reality is not something you simply witness. It is something you create. Now, let's move forward and uncover how to use this knowledge in ways that can transform your life. The brain as a reality generator, Part 3. You have spent your entire life trusting your senses, believing that what you see, hear, and feel is an accurate reflection of reality. But what if that's only a fraction of the truth? Your brain is not simply processing the world around you. It is actively constructing it. Every moment, it takes in fragments of information and weaves them into what you call reality. The colors you see, the sounds you recognize, and even the sense of time passing are all manufactured inside your mind. Jacobo Grinberg's Syntergic theory challenges the conventional idea that the brain is just a biological computer receiving data from the outside world. Instead, it proposes that your mind interacts with a deeper, more fundamental structure of reality, the Syntergic Field. This field is not something separate from you. It is something your brain tunes into, like a radio picking up invisible signals. The world you experience is not an objective reality, but a projection created by your own neurological processes. You have felt this in subtle ways throughout your life. Think about those moments when time seems to stretch or contract. Sometimes an hour passes in what feels like minutes, while other times a few seconds can feel like an eternity. That is not just a trick of perception. It is a glimpse into how your brain shapes reality itself. The way you experience time is not fixed. It is determined by the way your consciousness interacts with the Syntergic Field. Your brain filters an overwhelming amount of information every second, deciding what is important and what can be ignored. You do not perceive the world as it is. You perceive it as your brain allows you to. If you have ever driven home on a familiar route, and arrived without remembering the details of the journey. That is your brain filtering reality. It decided that you did not need to consciously process every single moment, so it filled in the gaps, creating the illusion of continuity. This ability to construct reality is not just about filtering information. It is also about modifying it. Your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs do not just influence how you interpret the world. They shape the very nature of what you perceive. When you feel anxious, the world seems overwhelming. People's words sound harsher, and even your own body feels tense. When you feel calm, everything shifts. Sounds become softer, the world appears more manageable, and even your interactions feel different. Your state of mind is not just an internal experience. It is the lens through which you generate reality. Grinberg's research explored how the brain's structure is deeply connected to the way it organizes perception. He studied the effects of altered states of consciousness, meditation, and sensory isolation to understand how shifting brain activity could lead to entirely new ways of experiencing reality. His findings suggest that what you consider normal consciousness is just one mode of operation. When the brain enters different states, whether through deep meditation, emotional intensity, or even moments of profound creativity, it begins to access different aspects of the Syntergic Field. You have experienced this yourself in those moments when you feel deeply connected to something beyond yourself. Perhaps you have lost yourself in a piece of music, stood in awe before a breathtaking landscape, or felt an inexplicable connection with someone you just met. These are not random emotional states. They are shifts in the way your brain interacts with reality. When you are fully present, when your attention is completely absorbed, your perception expands, and you momentarily break free from the rigid constructs of everyday awareness. Your brain is not a closed system. It is not isolated inside your skull, processing a pre-existing world. It is engaged in a constant exchange with the Syntergic Field, interpreting, modifying, and even co-creating reality itself. This is why different cultures, belief systems, and personal experiences lead to vastly different perceptions of the world. What seems obvious and true to you may be completely foreign to someone else. Not because one of you is right and the other is wrong, but because each brain is constructing reality in its own unique way. If your mind is capable of shaping reality in such profound ways, the next question is how you can learn to use this ability consciously. Most people go through life unaware that they are generating their own experience of the world. They react to situations as if reality is fixed, forgetting that they have the power to shift their perception. The more you understand how your brain interacts with the Syntergic Field, the more you can begin to take control of that process. This is not about denying external circumstances or pretending that challenges do not exist. It is about recognizing that your perception is never neutral. It is always filtered through your internal state, your beliefs, and your expectations. The same situation can be experienced in entirely different ways depending on how your mind constructs it. A simple conversation with a stranger can be perceived as an annoyance or as an opportunity for connection. A personal challenge can be seen as an obstacle or as a chance to grow. Reality is not just what happens to you. It is what your brain generates from the information it receives. Imagine the implications of this for your daily life. If your brain is constantly shaping what you experience, then small shifts in perception can lead to profound changes. Becoming aware of your mental filters, questioning your automatic reactions, and learning to expand your awareness can give you access to a broader spectrum of reality. What you accept as possible, what you consider important, and what you focus on all contribute to the way you generate your world. Grinberg's work suggests that the more you refine your awareness, the more deeply you can interact with the Syntergic Field. This is not an abstract philosophical idea. It is something you can observe in your own life. When you practice mindfulness, engage in deep reflection, or immerse yourself in creative expression, you are not just changing your thoughts. You are shifting the way your brain organizes reality. As you continue exploring these ideas, you will discover how to apply them in ways that can enhance your perception, improve your emotional state, and even transform the way you approach challenges. Reality is not something you passively observe. It is something you are actively generating, moment by moment. Understanding this is a first step toward unlocking the deeper potential of your mind. Now, let's move forward and explore how you can apply this knowledge in practical ways. The Syntergic Field and Personal Transformation, Part 4. You have spent your life navigating a reality that feels solid, predictable, and separate from you. Everything seems to exist independently. The objects in your home, the streets you walk, the people you interact with. But deep down, you have always sensed that reality is more than just physical matter, that there is something connecting everything, something you can't quite define but that you feel in certain moments. Jacobo Grinberg's Syntergic theory proposes that this invisible structure is not just an abstract idea but a fundamental field of information, the Syntergic field, and your mind is constantly interacting with it. This field is not something external or distant. It is something you are immersed in, something that shapes and is shaped by your consciousness. When you experience a deep intuition, when you sense that something is about to happen before it does, or when you feel an unexplainable connection with someone, you are not imagining things. These experiences are glimpses of how your brain interacts with the Syntergic field beyond the usual constraints of time and space. Your perception is usually limited by the patterns your mind has built over the years. You see the world in a certain way, not because that is the only way it exists, but because your brain has trained itself to filter reality through familiar structures. The way you process experiences, the way you respond to situations, and even the way you define yourself are all shaped by the neurological pathways you have reinforced over time. But just as these patterns were formed, they can also be expanded, moments of profound awareness. Those instances when you suddenly understand something at a deeper level, when you feel connected to something greater, when you experience a shift in perspective, are not random. They are signs that your consciousness is accessing a broader range of the Syntergic field. These moments can happen naturally, but they can also be cultivated. You do not have to wait for extraordinary circumstances to experience this deeper connection. You can train your mind to access it more frequently by learning to shift your perception. One of the ways to do this is by developing greater awareness of your own thought processes. Most of the time, your attention is directed outward toward tasks, responsibilities, and external stimuli. You rarely stop to observe how your mind is interpreting reality. But when you take a moment to step back and notice your own thoughts, you begin to realize that they are not absolute. They are patterns, habits of perception that you can modify. Expanding your access to the Syntergic field is not about adopting new beliefs or forcing yourself to think differently. It is about becoming more aware of how your mind constructs reality and learning to move beyond the automatic filters that limit your perception. This shift does not happen instantly, but with practice, you begin to notice how reality feels more fluid, how your intuition becomes stronger, how you perceive connections that once seemed invisible. Have you ever had the experience of thinking about someone you haven't spoken to in years, only to have them call you the next day? Have you ever walked into a room and immediately sensed the mood, even before anyone spoke? These moments are not just coincidences. They are examples of your brain tuning into information beyond the purely physical level. You are constantly exchanging data with the Syntergic field, but most of the time, you are unaware of it because your attention is locked onto the material aspects of reality. This is why meditation, deep focus, and altered states of consciousness have been used for centuries as tools to expand awareness. When you quiet the constant stream of habitual thoughts, you create space for new patterns to emerge. Your brain begins to process reality differently, and you start perceiving aspects of the Syntergic field that were previously invisible to you. This is not about escaping the physical world, but about learning to see more of it, to recognize the deeper connections that shape your experiences. Personal transformation happens when you shift the way your brain interacts with reality. If your perception is limited to the narrow patterns you have been conditioned to follow, your experiences will remain predictable, repeating the same cycles over and over. But when you expand your awareness, when you allow yourself to perceive reality in a new way, everything changes. You begin to notice opportunities where before you saw obstacles. You start feeling a deeper connection with the people around you, and you experience a greater sense of clarity and purpose. Grinberg's work suggests that the key to transformation is not in changing external circumstances, but in modifying the way your mind engages with the Syntergic Field. When you understand that your consciousness is not separate from the reality you experience, you begin to see that your thoughts, emotions, and perceptions are not just internal experiences, but active forces shaping the world around you. Your awareness influences how reality unfolds, whether you realize it or not. This is not about wishful thinking or blind optimism. It is about becoming more intentional with the way you direct your consciousness. The more you refine your perception, the more access you have to a reality that extends beyond the physical. You do not have to rely only on logic and external information. You can develop an intuitive sense that guides you in ways that traditional knowledge cannot. As you move forward, consider how often you accept reality as fixed when, in truth, it is fluid. Pay attention to those moments when you feel something beyond the surface, when you sense a connection that logic cannot explain. These are not moments of illusion. They are insights into a deeper level of reality. Learning to recognize them, trust them, and expand them is part of your journey toward accessing the full potential of your mind. Your perception is not just a passive reflection of the world. It is an active interaction with the Syntergic Field. The more you explore this connection, the more you will discover that reality is far more expansive than you ever imagined. Now, let's continue and explore how to apply these insights in practical ways that can transform your life. Practical applications in personal growth, Part 5. You go through life making decisions, forming relationships, and reacting to situations, often without realizing how much of your experience is shaped by your own perception. You may believe that the world simply happens to you, that circumstances dictate your emotions and responses, but the truth is far more profound. Jacobo Grinberg's Syntergic theory suggests that reality is not something fixed that you passively observe. It is something your mind generates and interacts with in ways that most people never consciously explore. When you begin to understand this, everything changes. Your thoughts, emotions, and intentions are not just private, internal experiences. They influence how you interact with the Syntergic Field, shaping the reality you navigate every day. The way you process information, the meaning you assign to events, and the expectations you hold all contribute to the structure of your experience. If you wake up already expecting a stressful day, your mind will selectively focus on moments of tension, reinforcing that expectation. But if you train yourself to shift your perspective, to observe reality from a broader awareness, you open the door to entirely different possibilities. Your relationships are a clear example of how this process works. The way you perceive someone determines the way you interact with them, and that, in turn, influences their response to you. If you enter a conversation expecting resistance, your tone, body language, and word choices will subtly communicate that expectation, and the other person will respond accordingly. But if you approach the same situation with an open mind, with a different internal state, the interaction takes a completely different course. This is not about manipulating outcomes. It is about becoming aware of how your own mental patterns shape the reality you experience. The ability to shift your perception is not limited to personal interactions. It extends to every aspect of your life, including your decision-making, creativity, and emotional well-being. When you recognize that your mind does not simply receive reality, but participates in its formation, you begin to develop a sense of agency over your experiences. Instead of feeling trapped by circumstances, you realize that you have the ability to interact with reality in a way that aligns with your growth and well-being. One of the most powerful ways to apply Syntergic theory is by refining your awareness of how your attention operates. Wherever you place your focus, energy follows. If you constantly dwell on limitations, obstacles, or fears, your mind reinforces those patterns, making them a dominant part of your experience. But if you learn to direct your attention with greater intention, you can begin to expand your perception, noticing opportunities, solutions, and new perspectives that were previously hidden from view. This is not about ignoring difficulties. It is about training your mind to interact with reality in a way that enhances your capacity to navigate life more effectively. Your emotions play a crucial role in this process. Every emotional state you experience is not just a reaction to external circumstances. It is a signal of how your consciousness is interacting with the Syntergic Field. When you feel inspired, connected, or deeply engaged in an activity, you are in a state of expanded perception, accessing a broader range of information and insight. When you feel trapped, frustrated, or disconnected, your perception narrows, filtering reality through patterns of resistance. Learning to recognize these states in yourself is key to consciously shifting your experience. If you think about the moments in your life when you have felt the most alive, the most clear-headed, the most deeply connected to yourself and the world around you, you will notice that they share a common element: presence. In those moments, you are not lost in repetitive thought loops, anxiously predicting the future or replaying the past. You were fully engaged with reality, and in that state, your perception expanded. The more you cultivate this presence, the more access you have to the deeper structures of reality that Grinberg described. Creativity is another area where the application of Syntergic theory becomes evident. When you are engaged in creative expression, whether writing, painting, problem-solving, or simply thinking in new ways, you are tapping into aspects of reality that are not strictly logical or linear. Inspiration often arrives in unexpected flashes, seemingly out of nowhere, but those moments are not random. They are insights from a deeper level of awareness, a sign that your consciousness is engaging with the Syntergic Field in a way that transcends habitual thinking. As you begin to integrate these ideas into your daily life, you will notice subtle but profound shifts. Small changes in the way you direct your attention lead to different perceptions, which lead to different responses, which ultimately lead to different outcomes. You will start recognizing patterns in your thoughts and emotions that once seemed automatic, and with that awareness, you gain the ability to shift them. This is not about adopting a rigid philosophy or following a set of rules. It is about becoming more conscious of the role your mind plays in shaping your experience. The more you explore this awareness, the more you realize that transformation is not something that happens to you. It is something you participate in. Reality is not a fixed, unchangeable structure. It is fluid, shaped by the interaction between your consciousness and the Syntergic Field. When you begin to experiment with this understanding, you step into a deeper level of engagement with life, one where perception is not just passive observation, but an active force of creation. As you continue listening, you will discover even more ways to integrate this awareness into your everyday life. The key is not in forcing change, but in refining your perception, learning to see beyond the limitations you once accepted as absolute. The more you cultivate this expanded awareness, the more you will experience the full potential of your own mind. Now, let's continue exploring how your beliefs shape reality in ways you may have never imagined. The Power of Belief and Reality Modification, Part 6. You have lived your entire life surrounded by invisible structures that shape your experience without you even realizing it. Your thoughts, emotions, and expectations are not just internal processes. They are the filters through which you construct reality. Every day, your mind interacts with the Syntergic Field, shaping what you perceive, how you feel, and what you believe is possible. Jacobo Grinberg's work suggests that your beliefs are not just reflections of reality. They actively shape it. Once you understand this, you can begin to shift your own experience in ways you never imagined. The way you see the world is not neutral. It is deeply influenced by the mental frameworks you have accumulated over the years. These frameworks determine what you notice, what you ignore, and how you interpret everything around you. If you have ever met someone who always seems to find obstacles and setbacks, no matter the circumstances, you are witnessing how powerful these internal structures can be. The opposite is also true. There are people who seem to attract opportunities, insights, and meaningful connections wherever they go. This is not about luck. It is about how they interact with reality at a fundamental level. Your beliefs are like lenses through which you view the world. When you believe something is impossible, Your mind closes off any pathways that could lead to a different outcome. When you believe something is possible, even if you don't yet know how, your mind begins to notice details, connections, and opportunities that were previously invisible to you. This is not wishful thinking. It is a direct consequence of how your brain processes information and interacts with the Syntergic Field. Think about a time when you had a strong expectation about something. Perhaps you were convinced that a certain situation would be difficult, and when it happened, everything seemed to confirm your fears. Or maybe you felt confident about an outcome, and things unfolded exactly as you expected. These are not coincidences. They are demonstrations of how your beliefs influence your perception, decisions, and even the way others respond to you. Your brain is not just a passive observer. It actively constructs the reality you experience. When you deeply believe in something, your mind aligns with that expectation, filtering out anything that contradicts it. This is why shifting your beliefs is so powerful. If you have spent years believing that change is difficult, that opportunities are rare, or that certain aspects of your life are beyond your control, those beliefs have been shaping your reality. But when you begin to question those assumptions, even slightly, you open the door to new possibilities. This does not mean ignoring difficulties or pretending that challenges don't exist. It means recognizing that your interpretation of events plays a crucial role in how you experience them. If you approach a challenge believing that you will find a way through it, your brain begins to search for solutions. If you approach it convinced that it is impossible, your mind shuts down any potential insights before they even appear. This is why people who cultivate a sense of curiosity and openness often seem to navigate life more fluidly. They are not trapped by rigid mental patterns that limit their perception. You have seen this effect in others, even if you haven't consciously recognized it. There are people who seem to radiate a sense of possibility, who approach life with a mindset that attracts new experiences, while others remain stuck in repetitive patterns, seeing only limitations. The difference is not in external circumstances. It is in how their minds interact with the Syntergic Field. Your emotions also play a role in this process. When you feel a deep sense of alignment with something, a project, a relationship, an idea, you are tuning into a broader field of possibilities. That feeling of excitement, clarity, or flow is a sign that your consciousness is resonating with a pattern that extends beyond your immediate awareness. When you ignore that feeling, when you convince yourself that something is unrealistic or impractical, you disconnect from that expanded perception. Shifting your reality does not require drastic actions. It begins with subtle shifts in awareness, noticing how your beliefs shape your experience, questioning assumptions that no longer serve you, and allowing yourself to perceive beyond habitual thought patterns are the first steps. When you do this consistently, your mind begins to interact with reality differently. You start seeing options where before there were none. You recognize connections between seemingly unrelated events. You experience moments of insight that seem to come from nowhere, but are, in fact, a direct result of your expanding awareness. The way you interpret reality is not fixed. It is fluid, shaped by your beliefs, emotions, and perceptions. When you start to work with this understanding instead of against it, your experience of the world begins to transform. You realize that reality is not something separate from you. It is something you are co-creating at every moment. Now, let's move forward and explore how to bring everything together into a deeper understanding of personal transformation. Conclusion and Call to Action Part 7. You have always been told that reality is something external, something that happens to you, but now you know that this is only part of the story. Your mind is not a passive observer. It is an active participant, shaping the world you experience every day. Jacobo Grinberg's Syntergic theory reveals that your consciousness is constantly interacting with a deeper field of reality, influencing your thoughts, emotions, and even the events that unfold around you. This understanding changes everything. Every time you shift your perception, even slightly, you alter the way your mind engages with the Syntergic Field. When you become aware of how your beliefs shape your experiences, you start to see patterns that were once invisible. When you refine your attention, You begin to notice opportunities where before you saw only obstacles. The way you interpret reality is not fixed. It is something fluid, something you can work with instead of being controlled by it. Your life does not have to be dictated by old mental habits or unconscious limitations. You have the ability to expand your perception, to develop a greater awareness of how your mind constructs reality, and to engage with life in a way that brings more clarity, connection, and meaning. The more you explore this, the more you will notice shifts in how you experience the world. If this journey has resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on what stood out the most. Experiment with these ideas, apply them in your daily life, and observe how your reality begins to change. And if you want to keep exploring powerful books like this, make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. Every week, we bring you new insights that challenge and expand the mind. Now, take a deep breath, let these ideas settle, and step into a reality where your perception is not just passive, but transformative.